Good morning. Please join us as we get started by singing together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome here to First Unitarian Church of Portland. We're a multi-generational community, and we strive to nurture the individual spirit and together build a beloved community. Welcome all gathered here in person. Welcome all joining us online this morning. Everyone is invited to a social hour following the service today. You can join fellow congregants for right below this sanctuary in our Fuller Hall. That will happen immediately after the service. If you're new among us today, I want to especially welcome you to a newcomers circle. You can join me in the welcome circle. It'll be here to my left in the side gallery. Love to meet you and hear what brought you to the church. You can also meet others who are new to the congregation and would love to answer whatever questions you have as you come into our community. And if you're ready for a more fulsome introduction to the church, next Sunday we'll have a First Steps class. That will be right after the service at noon. That'll be a chance to hear a little bit more about the history of Unitarian Universalism and our theology, a little bit about the history of this congregation, and again, a great chance to meet others and learn what it means to be a member of our community. After the service today, our Board of Trustees will present a forum on proposed changes to our Unitarian Universalist principles that will be coming up for a vote later this year at our denomination's General Assembly. This is a re-articulation of the core values of our faith. It's an important time in our denomination. The last time this happened was about 40 years ago, so this is not something that happens often. So this forum will be a chance to come and learn more and to engage with fellow congregants about what these changes might mean. The forum will happen at noon in our Buchanan building, which is in the building next door. And one further note about next Sunday, our men's community will once again offer a pancake breakfast starting at 9 o'clock, so come before the service. That will be next Sunday. And they plan to do that on the first Sundays of the month for the rest of this year. So come and enjoy pancakes with fellow congregants next Sunday, sorry, not next Monday. And finally, a note about today's service. Reverend Alison is going to be talking about the current situation in the Middle East this morning. This is a subject that can call up much for many of us, many emotions, many feelings. Part of what we are called to do in religious community is to make a space to look at difficult things and to know that we don't do this work alone, but in the company of others. So as we come together this morning, let us take good care of ourselves and of each other. You'll note that there's an extra candle box here in the front of the chancel. If you're moved to light a candle at any time this morning, you can do that just as a way of centering your thoughts. And so as we come together, let's take some time now to greet one another here in person and online. Let's greet our neighbors this morning. Our chalice lighters today are members of our transformation team. You may recall that in May of 2021, our congregation overwhelmingly voted to include a new 8th principle in our church's bylaws. That included a commitment to be an anti-racist and multicultural community. This transformation team is the group charged with supporting our church to live into these commitments, and they will light our chalice today. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
Could not see the sun. Our call to worship, the words are written by one of our board members and appear in our hymnal. They are by Leslie Pohl Cosbow. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom. We strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. That is our shared work today and every day. Will you rise in body or in spirit and let us sing together, Peace, the perfect word. Peace by the pupils of the Lincoln School. Peace means the beginning of a new world. It means that nations are friends. It means joy to the world. Peace is quiet and calm. It is rest. It is silence after a storm. It is love and friendship. It is the world's dream of dreams. Peace brings comfort and happiness. It brings bread to the hungry. It brings prosperity to the nations. It means the strong respect the weak, the great respect the small, the many respect the few. It is like spring after winter. It brings sunshine into the world. It is like sweet music after harsh sounds. And let us join together in our doxology.
It's our custom here at First Unitarian to share our offering each week with a community organization in concert with our own church mission. This year, we're dedicating our shared plate to community organizations that uplift the dignity and provide essential support for people experiencing homelessness. This month of January, we're sharing our plate with Project Red, an initiative from the Alano Club of Portland, dedicated to raising awareness around overdose prevention and increasing the availability of overdose prevention supplies and training. Project Red focuses on equipping bars, restaurants, strip clubs, entertainment venues, and community-based organizations with skills and with supplies. To give, if you're here in person, our ushers will come through in a moment to accept cash and checks. There will also be a QR code shortly for those here in person or those online to give through that QR code. Or if you're watching us on Boxcast, there is a Donate Now button on Boxcast. Thank you for your generosity that sustains the mission of our church and our partners in the larger world. Every Sunday, we make a space to hold the concerns of our community life together. A reminder that you can leave prayer intentions and light a candle in one of our galleries, or this morning down in front of the chancel. You can send a request to prayer at firstunitarianportland.org. And if you have a concern you would like announced, you can send that to parishconcerns@firstunitarianportland.org. This morning we hold member Jim Fasulo. Jim's father, Robert Peter Fasulo, died peacefully on January 10th at the age of 94. Jim says Robert was a dedicated husband, father, and longtime public servant, devoted, Catholic. Robert lived a full and vibrant life, consistently in service to others. Jim and his wife, Nancy, welcome our thoughts and prayers at this time of loss. We hold member Steve Kelly, member of our Radiance Choir, along with his sisters Ann and Debbie this morning. Their mother, Hazel, died on January 22nd, 3 weeks shy of her 98th birthday. Hazel lived in the family home in Bellevue, Washington for 75 years before moving into a group home last April. She will be remembered for her many paintings, love of clams and watermelon, humor towards the end, and her humor even at the end of her life, her strength and her perseverance. We hold Steve and his family today. Will you join me now in a spirit of meditation and prayer? Spirit of life and of love, God of many names and no name at all, hear our prayers this day. We bring prayers for our lives, for the lives of those in our closest circles. We bring prayers for our community, for our city, for our world. There is much to hold in these times, Spirit. There is much that should trouble. Help us to be present with all there is to hold. Help us to bear witness to the violence and hatred that manifest in so many ways and in so many places. Call us, Spirit, to be peacemakers, to be justice makers. Help us to see in our own lives the lives of others. In our living, may we help to create a world where all the children are safe, a world where all the children are well. In our living, help us to make a world where love is at the center. So be it. Amen. Let's take a few moments now and be together in silence. Let's remain seated as we sing together, Deona Naish.
Oh
Our reading today comes from poet William Stafford, A Ritual to Read to Each Other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade holding each elephant's tail, but if one wonders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs but not recognize the fact. So I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, an important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider, lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep.
One day when I lived in Strasbourg, I was strolling through the streets when I suddenly came upon a woman holding two dead men in her arms. It was a striking stone statue that captured so well the haunting cost of war. The statue depicted a mother cradling two dead soldiers, both her sons. One died for France, and the other died for Germany. In death, we see those sons' limp arms holding hands. Two human beings, once separated by war, are now united in death. Our common destiny. The sculptor's name is Leon Drivier, and his work was finished in 1936. He was inspired by the devastating losses of the First World War and created this monument to symbolize the end of the tragic conflicts in that region over the past centuries. Only it wasn't the end. While we think of the Alsace region as having stable borders today, borders, as we know, are not carved in stone. That area has been French or German, depending upon who was in power at the time, creating the possibility for brother to literally fight against brother. The political rhetoric about the side of good vanquishing the side of evil doesn't work well in one family. I remember standing at the foot of that statue and wondering if that grieving mother didn't let us glimpse a God's eye view of war. The end of World War I led to millions and millions of soldiers and, lest we forget, millions and millions of civilians dead. About 40 million in total. It led to the map of the world redrawn once more, and in particular today, I'll name a redrawing of the lines which encompassed the possessions, the land and resources, and the people that were once included in the Ottoman Empire. This is when the modern idea of a Jewish state, which had already been around for decades or longer, depending upon how you tell history, started to take root. This is when European powers, in particular the British Empire, started drawing boundaries for Palestine for the first time. After World War II led to millions and millions of soldiers and millions of civilians dead, about 80 million in total, and the map of the world redrawn once more, and in particular today, I'll name the redrawing of the lines of the map which included the land, the resources, and the people who lived in what is now considered Israel and Palestine. Right away, conflict which had long been simmering between Jews and Arabs living in the region escalated into war. And actually, January 28th today, the sermon was selected back in May with the title of "When Will the Fighting Cease?" And then the events of October 7th and a spirit today of where is our humanity? It is a crisis of inhumanity we are wrestling with this morning. While there have been ceasefires over time, the times of conflict and war seem never ending, especially right now as our hearts are breaking for the rising cost of more than 26,000 Palestinians massacred since October 7th, mostly civilians, and the 1,200 who were massacred in Israel on October 7th, and the 240 taken hostage that day. Violence leads to violence in an inescapable march towards death. Soldiers are wounded and killed. Civilians are maimed and killed. And so many soldiers and civilians, including thousands of children, die of diseases and lack of medical care. Maybe a third of the deaths in World War I were for this reason. And in Gaza today, where there is one hospital purported even capable of handling the kinds of injuries that are coming to them, where there is one collapsing hospital, how many will die from lack of care, water, and food? We do not yet know. Our screens and our papers are filled with sorrow and fear, terror and revenge. There are also glimmers of people saying enough, never again, and attempting to reach and act for peace. It is vital that you take in those stories too. They are not a denial of the devastation. They are efforts and attempts to end suffering and to practice peace building through compassion, diplomacy, and nonviolent actions. Two examples that you may want to follow are Standing Together, a grassroots movement of Jewish and Palestinian citizens of Israel who are coalition building around issues of common cause. And the Parents Circle Families Forum, made up of Palestinian and Israeli families who have lost immediate family members, children, spouses, parents, siblings. Groups like these remind us that however we move, it must be from an awareness of our common humanity. At a basic level, I repeat, we are dealing with a crisis of inhumanity, a failing to see each other as worthy or as kin in the human family, as we are invited to do by our first and eighth UU principles. Why and what has brought us to this place? One answer is a legacy of trauma and experiences of trauma that are being exploited to elicit fear and to give permission for mass violence. Now let me locate my own family in this as a lifelong Unitarian Universalist who is also Jewish on my mother's side. In part, one reason that Israel was created in 1948 was because European powers wanted to deal with what they called the Jewish problem and where to settle Jewish refugees after World War II. And because Jewish people were traumatized by pogroms, rising anti-Semitism, and ultimately the Holocaust. Many of us carry these stories, and it's important that we share the stories of trauma and be aware of when they are guiding our actions in ways that we might regret later. Here is one from my family, which settled in New York after pogroms and again after the Holocaust rather than in the Middle East. My mother's cousin Nesha moved in with her family for a time after surviving life in a concentration camp. The psychological ramifications of what she had seen cut deep. And I'll spare you the details of these deaths, but she saw many of her immediate family members murdered before her eyes, including her baby brother. At first, every time someone would ring the doorbell of my grandparents' home in Brooklyn, Nesha would grab my Uncle Mark, who was a baby, and put him in a closet or in a trunk. She feared who might be on the other side, and her survival instinct would kick in. How do you return to normal after witnessing and experiencing the impact of cruelty and callousness, oppression and occupation, tyrants and terrorism? Part of my answer is that I don't know. It is too easy to stand in judgment, sitting here in the comfort of a sanctuary on a Sunday morning in Portland, where I mostly do not fear for my life or the safety of my family. My mother's cousin, Nesha, did make it here to a new home, but as I have heard it, her emotional well-being never fully recovered. Speaking from my location, what I can say is that it helps if we who live in a country that is playing a role in the Middle East conflict stop normalizing violence, especially the mass casualties of innocents, as the natural cost of our own safety and protecting our nation's interests, or heaven forbid, doing this in the name of religion or any concept of morality. We have to stop normalizing military occupations that go on and on, escalating violence and the building of weapons of mass destruction, separating women or anyone who is oppressed from the tables of decision-making, experiencing sexual violence, ethno-national ideas of supremacy, bombing hospitals, and electing fascists as the price of protecting democracy. All of these are lies, and we have come here to speak the truth. Democracies flourish when all people have access to human rights, to self-determination, to adequate resources, including shelter, water, food, healthcare, to an education, to opportunities to contribute through their labor to the well-being of their community, as well as opportunities for rest and renewal. One problem we are facing is the erosion of democracy and the rise of the right wing around the globe. One way that we as Unitarian Universalists living in the United States can engage is through our work to deepen democracy and to expand who has access to the vote and who has access to leadership in our own country. One way that we can act as religious people is by advocating with our representatives for a view that does not decry the killing of one people as more important than the killing of another people. We can condemn the unending occupation that preceded October 7th, and we can condemn the acts of terror on October 7th and all the acts of terror that preceded that day. We can condemn this disproportionate response, which would be aptly termed revenge. How many deaths does it take till we know that too many people have died? Recently, I went with a small delegation of interfaith colleagues that included me and our social justice director, Dana Buell, to meet with Representative Suzanne Bonamici to ask for her support of a ceasefire, de-escalation, and restraint by all sides. On one hand, I want to share with you that our letter writing campaigns, joining with others who have written letters in her constituency, are making a dent in her conscience, and she is moving. On the other hand, I was struck at how she focused largely on the violence perpetrated against Israeli women in that meeting that we held with her. The sexual assault and rapes at the hand of Hamas. It is devastating, full stop, and we must talk about it. And we must talk about the Israeli Defense Forces bulldozing entire neighborhoods in Gaza, toppling buildings with innocent people inside. Imagine if half of the buildings in Portland were toppled. This is what people are facing. The murder of thousands in their streets, and the famine that is beginning along with the lack of medical care. There are human beings, children, adults, elders on both sides of the borders. We Universalists cannot cast out one side as not part of the beloved community. We Unitarians cannot fail to see the worth and dignity of every human life. What is more, it is not just theological. It is about practical actions to build peace. Just this week, the families of the hostages stormed the Israeli Knesset, demanding that they prioritize the release of their loved ones. The vengeful retribution enacted on innocent people isn't going to bring their family members home, and if anything, it will fuel support for greater violence and terror. Some of you may have seen a women's rights activist in Palestine, Afaf Gatasha, interviewed by Ramita Navai on a very recent episode of Frontline, and I have been reflecting on her words. I don't agree with Hamas socially or intellectually. I don't agree with Hamas democratically. However, I agree with them about their resistance program. And I agree with Hamas that we are people under occupation for the past 75 years, and this occupation must end. Let me pause for a moment to name the obvious. We are dealing with a humanitarian crisis in the Middle East that has been hundreds or thousands of years in the making, depending upon where you choose to start telling the story. I cannot possibly begin to accurately name everything that has led us here or what will lead us out of here in one sermon. While I have woven the conflict into other sermons, and today it is the focus of my sermon, I have barely begun to scratch the surface. But what I hope you feel and hear is that we cannot be complacent in the face of human suffering, and we are on the other side of the world, so we are particularly vulnerable to only hearing partial truths. Yet we must do what is ours to do to put an end to suffering. This does not mean a United States savior complex, and it does not mean disengagement either. And we must continue to learn history and what is unfolding in the present to the best degree that we are able. And this is beyond painful. As one of your pastors, be aware of how much you can take in, and take the time that you need to care for yourself and not just doom scroll on your phone or be led down a path of despair or hopelessness or fear. There are other options. Take in what you can, do what you can, and support those who are able to do more. For example, the people that are most impacted. And I want to share that we are inviting folks into our congregation who are most impacted to share their stories, and I hope you're paying attention to front steps, to ways that you can show up here as one source of information. This conflict is between two groups of people, although many more. But I'll name that we are aware that many of them come from common ancestors, one of whom saw Israel as both an ancient homeland and a modern refuge because of anti-Semitism, which is on the rise here. Israel is seen by some as a place of safety and security for Jews when and if other places become unsafe. So let's do something about American anti-Semitism so people aren't tempted to fund violence elsewhere for a just-in-case option. Let's also do something about the rise of Islamophobia. And I'll be honest, almost every time I have ever preached a sermon connected to Islam, I've received backlash comments, usually about people alleging Islam's inherent violence and that I didn't say that. When our elected leaders can speak about the suffering of Jewish-identified citizens of Israel, but not that of Muslim-identified Palestinians, that is rooted in Islamophobia. When a child in Chicago or a college student in Vermont know the stories you're connected to. One of the college students went to Haverford, and I lived on Haverford's campus for 3 years. When they can be shot for being Palestinian, it is Islamophobia. Yet do not be fooled into thinking this is a holy war. It is the Christian Zionists who want us to focus on that. They fund Israel's defenses because they want all of us Jews to go back to Israel. We are signposts to the second coming. We're not even human beings. And in Revelations, it does not end well. Basically, we all die along with all the Muslims and everyone else in the Middle East. We are left behind, and Orthodox Christians will enjoy the rapture. This is what Senator Lindsey Graham referenced in October when he said, "We are in a religious war here. I am with Israel. Do whatever the hell you have to do to defend yourself. Level the place." We need to stop pitting Jewish Israelis against Muslim Palestinians in the name of white Christian fantasies. Number one, Israel is not made up of only Jews, and Palestine is not made up of only Muslims, and this is not a holy war. This is a war over nation building, over decades of aggression and escalating trauma, including displacement, the stealing of homes in Europe and the stealing of homes in Palestine, over access to resources such as access to the Jordan River, and yes, an attachment to belonging to a land because of a connection to Abraham and Jesus, access to Jerusalem, among other places. But God is not on the side of death or destruction. God, which we Unitarian Universalists profess to be love, and love, which whether or not we believe in God, we profess to be the center of our faith, that God and that spirit of love are on the side of every human being flourishing, full stop. So let us dare to imagine and support not just visions of peace, but actions that are peaceful. And I only have time to name one today, but this needs to continue. An Israeli Jew who lost his daughter to this unending conflict imagined scenes of revenge and going to a nearby construction site and killing the Palestinians who were working there. A Palestinian Muslim who lost her brother to this unending conflict imagined scenes of revenge and killing Israelis, both in deep despair and wondering whether and how to go on, turned away from their violent fantasies towards an effort called blood relations led by the Parent Circle Families Forum. Each of them took part in donating blood that would go to both Israelis and Palestinians. Each took responsibility for being a part of a healing effort that would aim that healing towards both sides. And each experienced what it would be like to know and be known by someone on the, quote, other side, who would act as if the other were kin until it felt more true than the opposite, which is the truth. We are all kin in the human family. And when we learn how to act from that place, that is when we can finally move from a temporary ceasefire to a lasting peace. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen, shalom, and salam. And I want to offer a prayer of the mothers by Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum and Sheikha Ibtasam Mohammed, translated by Rabbi Amichai Lau Lavi. God of life, who heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, may it be your will to hear the prayer of mothers. For you did not create us to kill each other, nor to live in fear, anger, or hatred in your world. But rather, you have created us so we can grant permission to one another to sanctify your name of life, your name of peace in this world. For these things I weep. My eye runs down with water for our children crying at night, for parents holding their children with despair and darkness in their hearts, for a gate that is closing and who will open it while day has not yet dawned. And with my tears and prayers which I pray, and with the tears of all women who feel deeply the pain of these difficult days, I raise my hands to you. Please, God, have mercy on us. Hear our voice that we shall not despair, that we shall see life in each other, that we shall have mercy for each other, that we shall have pity on each other, that we shall hope for each other, and we shall write our lives in the book of life. For your sake, God of life, let us choose life. For you are peace, your world is peace, and all that is yours is peace. And so shall be your will. And let us say together, Amen.
Praise God.
And now in our going, may the light of love bless us and keep us. May it shine down upon us. May it be gracious unto us. And may it radiate out from within us and make of us all peace builders. For this is the day that you and I are given. So let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Go in salam. Go in shalom. And practice love again and again. Blessed be one and all, and share that blessing you are with the world.